And welcome everybody to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Jesse Weber. The Alex Murdaugh murder trial came to a screeching halt on Wednesday thanks to a bomb threat called into the courthouse. Authorities evacuated the Colleton County Courthouse just before 1 p.m. on Wednesday. An official told the state newspaper that the threat was called in specifically against Judge Clifton Newman. The caller apparently said a bomb was inside the judge's chambers, which are on the second floor of the courthouse. The state's 38th witness was about to take the stand when Judge Newman brought everything to a halt and asked for the jury to be dismissed. He then told everyone in the courtroom that they had to leave. Murdaugh and the jury were also taken away from the courthouse, and deputies set up a perimeter around the block. More than 2 hours later, though, court resumed with that 38th witness finally able to be questioned. Officials haven't said whether that threat was ever substantiated. Now, before the courtroom was evacuated, part of the day's testimony focused on gunshot primer residue. You see, the defense cross-examined a forensic examiner with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, and she testified that 38 particles were identified on the inside of a blue rain jacket. Prosecutors have suggested that those particles could have gotten there if the raincoat was wrapped around a gun, possibly to hide it. Investigators also found particles on the shirt that Alex Murdaugh was wearing on the night of the murders, as well as his shorts and one particle on his hands. However, the defense pointed out that gunshot primer residue can be easily transferred from one surface to another and can stay on a surface for very long periods of time unless someone actually removed it. Now, it's been well established throughout the trial that the Murdaughs often used guns for hunting and had various guns on the property. A murder weapon, though, has never been recovered in this case. I want to bring in my special A-team, Brian Buckmeyer, Terry Austin. Brian, I'll start with you. What exactly is gunshot residue and what are they testing for?
All right, so Jesse, a person pulls the trigger of a gun and that causes the firing to strike the primer. And that's located at the base of the cartridge. Now, the primer strikes and turns, you got sparks, and then it's a chemical reaction, right? Ignites the gunpowder, resulting in an explosion, shoots that bullet outside of the gun. And so what they're testing for is the gas that comes out of the gun along with the bullet. There's typically unburnt gunpowder, tiny bits of metal, and signature chemicals from the primer mixing usually with lead and other types of substances like barium, And that fused together with the heat of the gun firing, it settles on a person's clothing and other nearby surfaces. So what they're really testing is the quantity and the amount of these distinct chemicals that indicates that a person either one, recently fired a gun, was either two, in the very close proximity to a gun when it was fired, or three, came into direct physical contact with a person who did the firing. This is less common because if it's a direct contact type of situation, there are fewer particles, but that's actually what the defense is arguing, that there may be a direct contact argument rather than the actual firing.
Well, Terry, the gunshot residue is something that the prosecution really honed in on in their opening statement. I mentioned all the places where it was located. You think that's enough to convict Alex Murdaugh?
Well, it's a good start. It was also located on the buckle of that seatbelt in that Suburban, so it's a number of locations. And if you couple all of this circumstantial evidence, and it is circumstantial, but that's just as good as direct evidence. If you couple that with the fact Paul's video with Cash and Bubba having the voice of Alex in the background, I think is pivotal. Then you also have his nurse for his mom saying that he suggested that she say it was 30 to 40 minutes instead of 15 to 20. So I think if you put all of this circumstantial evidence together, the prosecution really has a solid case, or solid enough.
I think if the jury accepts that it was the rain jacket he was holding and he crumpled it up a week after the murders and has the gunshot residue, that is going to be devastating for the defense. That's my take. But I'll tell you what, and Law and Crime is covering this trial for you gavel to gavel. You can go to lawandcrime.com to see the latest articles, live streams, and of course, expert insight. We're following a celebrity murder trial out of Broward County, Florida that we want to talk about. 3 men are facing life in prison for the 2018 shooting death of rising rap artist Jahseh Onfroy, known by his stage name XXXTentacion. The artist was just 20 years old when he was shot and killed at a motorcycle dealership. He was allegedly ambushed by 2 masked men while driving out of the parking lot. You see, the 2 men are also accused of stealing Onfroy's designer satchel, which had $50,000 cash inside, as well as the rapper's personal belongings. Prosecutors say defendants Michael Boatwright and Trayvon Newsom are responsible for shooting Onfroy, while Dedrick Williams drove the getaway car. A fourth co-defendant, Robert Allen, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and robbery with a firearm, and as part of his plea deal, he is required to testify against his co-defendants, and you know what? He did just that on Wednesday. Here's what he had to say.
Trayvon Newsom reaches inside the bag. Inside the car and grabs the bag.
What bag?
XXX's bag.
Okay, do you remember what kind of bag it was?
Yes.
Tell us.
The Louis Vuitton bag.
What does Trayvon Newsom do after he grabs the bag?
As he's grabbing the bag, shots are fired.
Who shoots the shots that are fired?
Michael Boatwright.
And who does he shoot?
XXX.
What does Michael Boatwright do next?
He runs to get back in the car.
What does Trayvon Newsom do?
He kind of like slips and falls like a little bit, and then he runs to the car.
What does Dedrick Williams do? Now, are all four of you back in the Dodge journey?
Yes.
What does Dedrick Williams do?
He drives off.
Terry, in addition to that devastating testimony, the prosecution has evidence of cell phones, surveillance footage. It seems like a pretty straightforward prosecution. I have to ask you, though, do you think law enforcement should have investigated other theories or not?
Absolutely not. That would have been a waste of time. This is clear cut. There's video, and now you have one of the defendants talking about what exactly happened and testifying against the other three defendants. I think just because XXX mentioned Drake on an interview and he later withdrew that comment doesn't mean that they should be pursuing these theories. They only have a certain amount of time and resources to go after the real suspects here, and they did just that. They have witnesses who saw them come into that motorcycle, the store there, and they have the video. So I definitely don't think they should have been pursuing these ludicrous theories.
Brian, though, robbery with a mask, what's likely to come from the defense, arguing it's not their client?
Yeah, so the prosecution already laid it out, Jesse, that they want the jury to look at the person's gait, their height, the way they moved. But getting told people to agree on the way that someone walks is difficult. And that's an avenue for which the defense can create reasonable doubt. It's difficult to say that this person you don't know, you've never seen before, they walk a certain way and that they're supposed to identify them based on that. But the prosecution can lean on these other witnesses that give them other forms of evidence to identify the defendants in this case. But I do think there is some argument there, whether or not it's reasonable doubt or not is up for the jury to decide, but there's something for the defense to kind of sink their teeth into there.
Reasonable doubt. This looks pretty bad for all of them.